How many times will we mistakenly say Guardian Angel in this episode instead of Guardian Devil? Plus, we're going to talk about Shazam, but not that movie version. To find out more, keep listening. This is Campus Comics Cast, episode 157. I am Scott Reed, and I am joined on this episode by
Mike Atchison
and Chad Schubert.
So without any further ado, let's just dig into this episode's discussions. We're going to be talking about Daredevil Volume 2, issues 1 to 8, of course, by Kevin Smith, Joe Quesada, and Jimmy Palmiotti. I almost reversed the order on those two guys. And then we're going to talk about Jeff Smith's solo work, Shazam, Monster Society of Evil, right?
Mm-hmm.
Make sure I got the title.
That's right.
There.
Yep.
And then as we do on these episodes, we're going to wrap it up with the CLZ shake. So you guys got anything you want to say or add before we just dig into Daredevil?
No, I think we can dig right in.
Just dig right in. Okay, so I have something of a little synopsis written for each of the episodes. I'm try to keep it fairly brief so we don't spend 6 hours talking about this, which I'm sure we probably could. With it being, Kevin Smith is a little bit wordy, right?
Right. Absolutely.
So, episode, issue 1. All right, we start with a letter from Karen Page, all right, who is basically leaving Matt. So we kind of get the Dear John letter from her. Then we kind of move forward 6 months. We meet a young girl named Gwyneth, who has a very young child with her who's being chased by a couple of hooligans. The girl thinks that her birth of this child was actually an immaculate conception and that the child is ultimately going to be the savior of the world. Matt saves them, but the pair are able to slip away. We got a lot of changing scenes here. So Foggy back at their offices appears along with a client named Lydia, and it's pretty evident that they seem to be into each other. The two are responsible for the attempt on the young girl, are summarily dismissed by our criminal mastermind for this story, who we don't know who it is at this point. We later find Gwyneth with the child in an alley where she has another angelic vision, so we kind of get a feel for why she feels the way she does about this child. The next day, Gwyneth and the child show up at Matt's office and leaves the child with Daredevil. That kind of wraps up issue 1. So comments on issue 1?
Well, going sort of in reverse order, the way Matt's holding the baby is so typical of a guy that's never really held a baby before. So he's like got it outstretched. Like, what do I do with this thing?
It's exactly how I would hold a baby.
Yeah.
I was brought in pretty quickly by Smith's narration. I mean, that first letter, that Dear John letter that Karen Page wrote, I thought was really good. I'm like, he could probably sell that to women that want to break up with their boyfriends. I mean, that's really well done. It's like, a long version of It's Me, Not You,
There you go. Yep.
The rest of it was, I can't say, that I've seen a lot of Joe Quesada art in the interiors and much less with Quesada and Palmiotti together, but I really thought the art was fantastic right off the bat. And Smith, really, to be honest, the only big storylines I've read with him in the past were Spider-Man, Black Cat, and Green Arrow. So this was kind of nice to get back into some of his earlier stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think I've seen a lot of Quesada artwork interiors either, but it becomes instantly recognizable, and you go, "Oh, I think I could point this out." So I was enjoying that, and yeah, as far as the Kevin Smith writing, it's wordy, but in a way that like you feel like just a guy that talks a lot is talking to you. Like
snappy.
Yeah, it's easy to understand, It's got good rhythm to it, feels natural. It's just a lot of words, which makes sense for somebody like Kevin Smith.
Yeah.
That letter from Karen, and we see more writing from Karen as the story progresses, right? And it definitely has that Daredevil yellow, Spider-Man blue feel to it. The Loeb Sale stories where they're all basically some type of letter that's being written to somebody else. So it kind of feels like a little bit of a. Well, I guess should check and see. I don't know which one came first. Would it be this homaging that, or I think it would actually be those homaging this?
Yeah,
because I think you're so. Right. So, it feels like this is maybe what set up for that homage.
Yeah. Now, what year did this was volume 2 of Daredevil? What year did it start?
Was it
98?
98?
97, 98. Okay.
Yeah. And I meant to get online and look up when the first volume of Daredevil ended.
Oh, okay. Like how much of a gap there was.
I mean, I want to say it was 130 some odd issues, maybe.
This
volume? I just
don't
know the year. Yeah, I'm pretty.
No, I'm talking about the previous volume.
The first one. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and because I probably could just look in the in the app, but that would require me closing out of this Daredevil story and going into another one. So let's see.
Well, I guess they say since it's legacy numbering again, it's currently ongoing. Or
yeah.
It went through to 2019, I guess is what it says.
Yeah, but it's I wish I could figure out how long before it ended. So because it was canceled basically. I mean, it went like 300 and something issues.
380. It ended October 98, and then this started November 98. So
really, I thought it was canceled. Huh? I was mistaken.
There may be a gap somewhere else in there, but it does run all the way up to October 98. It looks like.
Okay, I'll have to get in and look into that a little bit more. I thought there was a pretty good gap where there wasn't any Daredevil being printed, but obviously that is not correct. So, okay, well that's good to know because I was thinking it had gone from being nothing, and canceled to again one of Marvel's best books. So I'm apparently am incorrect. We're getting that more and more on these episodes, and I keep it in the recordings, so it just tells you all the professional effort that I put into this. So I don't really, I mean, this is probably Quesada's best work. It's just so good. So, all right. Anything else you want to add on issue 1?
I noticed that they had a trend here for the first few issues of when they, in the credits page, they each gave themselves sort of a nickname. You had Kevin. Man, I can't read it. Well, you got Joe.
Kevin, you asked for him, you got him.
Yeah.
Joe Smoothie Q. Jimmy, who's your daddy?
Right.
Dan the Baron. Liz, Danger's my middle name. Nancy, Menace to Society, and Bob, you couldn't pay us enough to do his job, Harris. So
yeah,
there you go. But all right, so issue 2.
Yep.
All right, so Matt, not knowing what to do with the child, calls who? Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff, right? Because she had a great childhood. And can you say misogynistic much? Right. But anyway, Matt is then met in his office by someone named Nicholas Maccabees, right? Who I'm trying to figure out. There's supposed to be some play on that name, but I can't come up with anything. Who claims to be the head of an organization called Sheol and wants the child dead because the child is the Antichrist. Nicholas basically knows everything there is to know about Matt Murdock, his history, that he's Daredevil, that he's all of these things, and which of course freaks Matt out just a little bit. But as Nicholas leaves, he leaves Matt with this small cross, kind of as his calling card. Matthew Murdock at this point, because of this encounter with Nicholas Maccabees, is so convinced that the baby is the Antichrist that he throws it off the roof, but fortunately the child is then saved by Natasha Romanoff. Moving over to Foggy and his relationship with Lydia, that is suddenly becoming a very intimate relationship. And then we are, several months past Karen Page leaving, but Karen Page returns back to Matt to basically give him the news that she's learned that she is now HIV positive. To wrap up issue 2. Comments.
Yeah, I got a couple. Okay, so I feel a little bit. I don't want to spoil anything, but my concerns that I had with Matt being so accepting of Nicholas McCabe's story or Maccabee's story, I kind of understand it better now, having read the whole thing. But it was an extreme thing to see that baby being thrown off the roof by Matt.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I was going to
seem very out of place, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, to the point of, okay, this can't be. There's got to be more to the story. The Sheol organization, is that something that's been around before, Scott?
No, that did exist just for this story.
Okay.
And I mean, there is a lot of religious references in this, though the spelling is different. Like I assume the reason why I'm calling it Maccabees instead of McCabe's, even though the Maccabees, which I think has a double B in it, not a single B, is actually a reference to intertestamental portion of like the Apocrypha that you'll find in like a Catholic Bible. That they're the group of Jewish people who led the resistance against, like, I can't remember. I think it might have been the Greeks during that intertestamental time. So I think that's probably where that name Maccabees actually came from. But there's a lot of religious references inside this work, and so Kevin Smith did of course, he had Dogma, was one of his movies, right? Yeah. So he was familiar. He had some familiarity.
He was grown up Catholic, so he had a lot of the background of it all.
I thought the same thing about Maccabees, that it had to be more than just, it had to be a play off of that original, that book of the Bible that is in different versions. There was a couple lettering mistakes, and that's something I didn't expect to see. But on page 21,
issue 2, let me get there with you. Hold on a second. Go ahead. All right, go.
So the second caption on the very top, it says, "To be quite honest, there are time I know I've lost my mind."
Oh yeah,
so it's like missing the S. And then this is Mike, pick things apart, Atchison. Down towards the bottom. I can't find. There was another one in that one of those low panels at the bottom. I'm so scared I'm gonna find it.
Well, I mean, at this point, I'm trying to remember exactly where in the Marvel is going bankrupt phase of the company that they were. So there probably were some corners being cut here and there. And then maybe
the proofreading stuff.
So
Karen says, I thought I make it out alive. So she meant to say I thought I would make it out alive. So nothing big, but it did stand out to me. And if it distracts someone from the reading, it's like, ooh, that's a little bit of a smudge. I didn't really like the color. I mean, it looked like she was crying ink tears.
I wonder how close or far this. Again, it's kind of hard to put things in perspective, but how close or far this was from the whole Tammy Faye Baker time period where we had all the televangelists.
Mascara. Oh right, yeah, that's what it could be. Yeah.
So, okay, so I just the Marvel. So Marvel went bankrupt in 1996.
Okay.
So I guess they're on their way. They were kind of on their way coming out of this still.
Back,
after at this time. So
yeah.
I thought it was weird that this issue and some other ones, that there's a lot of people who come up to Matt and know exactly who he is in this story, like know that he's Daredevil, and I was like, okay, well is that normal? Is he, because he's not out, and I mean obviously the Maccabee guy, but and then the girl from that the little girl that's pregnant or has a kid also knows exactly who he is. It's like there's a lot of people that have his secret out in this storyline.
Now, so of course the two of course obviously Karen knows who he is. I don't remember if Foggy knows who.
I don't think so
at this point, but those two, Gwyneth and Nicholas Maccabees, they're in it because of who the mastermind is. Right.
Yeah.
So, and then once we get to that will, but no, it's not. That's why he's so freaked out about it.
Yeah.
It's not like, he's had his identity wiped clean,
Yes.
At least twice, and probably more than that,
Right.
So yeah, and those have all been fairly well after this point,
Okay.
So he was a character who wasn't like, he didn't go out of his way to, well, he would hide his identity, right? But I mean, eventually, to see if he got close with somebody, he wasn't scared to tell him who he was.
Oh, I see.
Natasha knew who he was, and eventually Foggy and Karen and all that. So,
gotcha.
Okay. Issue 3. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I guess I forgot to mention in issue 2 that I made the note about Foggy's relationship with Lydia was becoming intimate. Well, that evening, basically he kills, Lydia in his mind turns into this serpent woman and basically scratches the kaplooey out of Foggy's face and then throws herself out of a window. Okay, so then of course the police become involved in the situation, basically bring Foggy back to Matt, but moving back over to Karen, Shield shows up and approaches Karen about her situation and basically tries to convince Karen that her HIV positive situation is the result of a curse that's on this baby and not of anything of her own fault. Matt, who is trying to represent Foggy, quits the law firm that they're working for, Sharp, Nelson and Murdoch, instead of just Nelson and Murdoch like we're used to hearing, whenever Foggy's own mother, who is the Sharp of that trio, will not allow Matt to represent Foggy using any of the firm's resources. Matt then is tricked while he's attempting to stop a mugging, and that's a little plot device that gets thrown in several of these issues. It's like Matt just randomly goes and stops a mugging of some shape, form, or fashion.
Yeah, right.
So here it's another one. Matt goes to stop a mugging, so we don't really think anything about it because he's already done it once or twice in these issues. But this time he gets cold cocked from behind by the person who he thought was being mugged because it was a setup, and they capture Matt. So Matt is then being interrogated by someone named Bale, all right, but manages to escape, but his escape is into oncoming traffic to wrap up issue 3.
Now, Bale, that's one of those demons from somewhere.
Another biblical reference, right?
Right.
Yep.
Something I did look up is on page 2. It's mentioned that a term called judgmental vacuum, and it's basically what is they teach in law school, according to Smith here, or according to Matt Smith through Matt, that it's a skill that you're taught how to get beyond any of your self-loathing for representing someone who you really believe is guilty. And I actually looked that up. I thought, well, that's got to be pretty common, and I couldn't find it. So I don't. It might be just something Smith made up. Yeah.
Yeah, that I don't know. I didn't bother to look that up. I just kind of accepted it. So
it's like it made enough sense. Yeah.
My search of the web, it is basically the first page. Anything deeper is considered the dark web to me. So if I don't see a hit on the first page, I don't. That's it. It's not there.
Dark web.
It's a lot of. I mean, it's a lot of bad things happening now, and it plays right into the whole theme of, okay, he's cursed because he's not giving up the baby. With Karen learning she has AIDS, Foggy's arrested for murder. Matt quits the firm. All of these things, he can't even represent Foggy. It's plays well into the whole theme that are what is designed to make him think that this is a real deal if he doesn't give up the baby.
It does seem as though like he's somewhat easily gullible to I don't know, to go straight into I believe this kid could be the Antichrist and is causing all this issue. Like that just goes, he goes straight into it. It doesn't take a lot of convincing for Matt to go to that, which I guess could be part of the whole could be tied into the ending and how it all unfolds.
Yes,
And
I think
sure, yeah. That's what I
ultimately
think.
that's it. When we get into issue 5, we learn the truth about some of these moments.
yeah,
Right.
he's
Now,
not as naive as it may seem.
yeah, but you got to remember though is that there are times in his past, specifically Born Again, the Miller Mazzucchelli,
Yeah.
Mhm.
where he started blaming his close friends, and like we see those moments here in this story
Yeah.
where he decides Natasha is part of the scheme.
Mhm.
So it's you kind of, if you've read that story, and most people who are reading this story have probably had read Born Again at some time, they're like, well, yeah, he's done this before, so this is not something that would be out of question in Matt's character.
Right.
But you'd be going, oh, we got this happening again, right?
Yeah.
So it kind of feels like if you're thinking that way, then all of a sudden you're going, well, man, this is just Kevin Smith just ripping off Miller.
Just redoing, Born
Yeah,
Again. Yeah.
just redoing Born Again, just with a slightly different story arc.
Right.
But there's more to that also when we kind of get to the end of it, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I do like the whole
They do
scene
make
where
reference to that. Yeah.
I like the whole scene where he's trapped by, it was a Bale.
Either nobody will agree on how to pronounce it. Bale,
but
Bale.
where and there's this like the noise, and he hears the gap in the just the switch over in the loop of the sound, and figures out that he can make a move really quick to aim his stick, his baton,
Billy
whatever
Club.
his billy club towards it. Those are my favorite parts of like a Daredevil story, which is kind of just the same as like it's a Batman thing. It's I think it's why it's like very detective.
And there's a lot of old style storytelling in this one, because it's like we get kind of this recap, about what his abilities are, even like the very first page of issue 4 that we're about ready to get into. I mean, he's talking about his ability to hear heartbeats and distinguish, and how he can, identify people through some of his superpowers. So that way, if issue 4 is the first book that somebody picked up of Daredevil, they have some idea about the character, because it's not written like it is now, where you're going to get a block of 6 issues, in a trade. It's issue by issue. You got to reintroduce, this character.
I really felt that the design of Baal or Baal or whatever is creepy. I thought that was a good design. I don't know what it is about it. The way the hair looks like a ram's horn almost, and but I thought that was well done.
Yeah.
All right, so issue 4, Daredevil is rescued by Black Widow, but is somehow convinced that Natasha is in on the scheme. So he turns on her to actually steal the baby, and then leaps from the top of the building in an attempt to not only kill himself, but to kill the child, but apparently changes his mind at the last moment. So then we find him, he kind of wakes up or crawls to the doorstep of a church where his mother is there as a nun. And this again kind of harkens back to that whole Born Again storyline. We cut over to our mysterious mastermind, who's upset that his lackeys have not been completing their tasks. He also comments, and this is where we start getting some clues about the identity of who the mastermind is resilient like his friend the Arachnid, and then orders that the assassin be brought in to correct this situation. Matt awakens a couple days later with his mother and the child, and they discuss the situation. All the while, Matt is continuing to have these psychotic moments where he suddenly wants to attack his mother and attack the child. While this is happening, Karen Page is able to find Matt inside the church. Karen asks Matt about the whereabouts of the child, but Matt realizes that he's never spoken to Karen before about the child. So they have a fight, because apparently Karen is in on this, and she leaves. Back at Sheol, we see that the assassin that they have hired is none other than Bullseye to bring in the child. Thoughts, comments? If you're talking, Mike, we can't hear you because you're still muted.
I was talking to myself.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I was reading my notes and not looking at the screen. I mean, I think the best part the best thing I liked about this issue was Matt's mother's parable about the knight and the monk. Thought that was good. Bullseye is a pretty cool character. and we'll see more of him next issue.
Yep.
I thought Natasha's mistake of slipping up was a rookie mistake, but it was obviously by design, because the writer had to create that conflict. But otherwise, I thought that was a good issue.
Yeah, a lot of action, a lot of setup. I like the relationship between Matt and his mom, and that kind of, because it all still seems, even though it's a lot more like on the page that it is his mom than it is in Born Again. It is very, very evident. Whereas like the way that Miller treats it is like that's what he means, right? Like he means that's his mom. But it still feels somewhat weird. Like it's such a odd relationship between a mother and son that I do like the way that it's set up there, and that's probably my favorite part of this issue.
Issue 5. So Matt, in an attempt to get some definitive answers to what's going on with his child, goes to Doctor Strange, of course, the master of the supernatural. Matt learns that there is nothing supernatural about what has been going on, and in fact, he has been drugged by a chemical that was on the cross that Sheol had given to him, kind of as their calling card. And with that toxin removed from Matt's system, he's once again thinking clearly. Here, Karen gets another monologue, but probably the important thing that we learn from that sequence is that the appearance of Sheol's leader is actually that of a dead actor who had been found murdered in Hollywood a few days prior to these events. Dr. Strange, then back at his abode, summons Mephisto, and Mephisto basically gives Strange and Daredevil a Sunday school lesson about the end times and how this child cannot be the Savior or the Antichrist. But in this, Mephisto gives Matt an eerie pronouncement about his mother. Matt then returns to the church to confront Bullseye, who's looking for the child. Karen arrives and attempts to work with Matt's mother to seek the child out, but the plans fails. And then as Bullseye is leaving with the child, he quote unquote returns Daredevil's Billy Club back to him, but in the process basically kills Karen by impaling the Billy Club in Karen.
Is that even possible?
Well, he's Bullseye.
I know he's good.
So, you saw him earlier in the previous issue where he flicks a paper clip off of a wine glass to mark his page in a book. So, obviously, he has that hyper accuracy. So,
I think it would have been more believable if it was aimed so precisely and at the right time to be between the beats of a heart to where it would stop the heart, kind of like that football player.
I agree. Yeah,
that would have been, I think, a little bit better. The rest of it's just got to roll with it.
Yeah.
Because I don't. It's not a question with Bullseye of accuracy. It's a question of force.
Yes,
can he
actually
throw it that
exactly?
far
Yeah.
To do that. So
the whole church scene was brutal. I mean, going back to this Nicholas Maccabi, when I first seen him, I thought this guy looks like Geppetto or something from Pinocchio. I don't know. He's meant to be somewhat of a appealing guy, I guess, or a believable guy, so that Matt would believe him. But now you see that there's something going on because the person that looks like that is dead. He was murdered. He was an actor.
Which, by the way, ends up being another clue about who our mastermind is.
Yes. And I knew that Karen Page has died once or maybe more times in the past, but I did not expect this issue. I didn't know that it was going to happen in this run.
And
here.
and I was thinking about this. I'm trying to recall if she has been. So I don't recall her dying prior to this, but I don't know that she's been back.
Okay.
So I think this may be one death so far that is stuck. I guess I should have looked that up prior to making that statement, right? But
it does seem as though that is at least her first death, but may also be her only
death. Yeah.
Only death.
Yeah, because like we saw in Born Again, she kind of just was out of the book. They didn't kill her off; she just kind of went away.
Uh-huh.
And then Miller brings her back in Born Again, right, under less than ideal circumstances. And I think she hung around for a little while, maybe, and then left again at the beginning of this issue, and then comes back, right away. But it's a 6-month time period with bad news. But that bad news is related to her time leading up to Born Again, where she was a drug addict and a prostitute, right? So,
well, looking at the Marvel fandom site, it shows her first appearance being Daredevil #1 in '64, and her death being Daredevil Volume 2, #5, January of '99. So it looks like it has been permanent.
So we've got Uncle Ben and Karen Page are the two deaths in Marvel that are stuck.
Yeah.
So. All right. 6.
Yep.
Ready for 6? Okay. So Wilson Fisk in our opening scene is reading the paper and basically mentioned his predestinator. I'm not even gonna try to say that again. Friend. That's again another clue as to the identity of who our mastermind is. I really appreciated those little drops through this, reading this again, because I don't know that the first time I noticed those things, or if I wasn't in on the ending to know that I should have been looking for those things. But basically, Matt struggles with the loss of Karen. Basically, remembers some conversations that they had from the past. Ultimately, he decides to go after Sheol. Matt, after a brief run-in with Turk, all right, goes to the headquarters of Sheol and fights his way through a gauntlet of enemies, finally realizing that his true foe is another costume. So somebody else who's basically in a costume. As Matt enters the final weak location, we learn that the villain is none other than Mysterio.
Well, for those that were wanting to find out what this word prestidigitator means, they would get a good hint as to who our ultimate bad guy is. The definition of a prestidigitator is someone who performs magic tricks to amuse an audience.
I thought it was prestidigitator. I think it's prestidigitator.
Yeah.
So I knew that having
about an extra.
Yeah.
It's about the prestige, I guess.
Yes. Kind of like on that way, exactly. So, so it just implies it's a magician, right?
Yeah.
All right. So, and of course, Mysterio is primarily a Spider-Man villain. So, I guess that's kind of in a way a little bit of a surprise here, because you're kind of thinking it's going to be a Daredevil villain, but in fact we get a Spider-Man villain as the bad. So.
And I like that, even though it's jumping ahead, I like that they address that. Like
yes.
It's not just like, hey, you're supposed to, like, this is just a normal. This is it's definitely he spells out why he is no longer a Spider-Man villain.
Well, or why he went with Daredevil for this crime instead of Spider-Man.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
I really like the scene with the thugs that are in the bar, and the guy's bragging about how he killed Daredevil, and everything he's describing is Batman. He's talking about the Devil Cave, the utility belt, the giant dinosaur trophy. So that was Kevin Smith having a little fun.
Yeah.
Well, you'll get a little bit more fun on in the first panel of issue 8 when we get there as well. So
okay.
So this it's going to become a issue that you need to pick up for a reason.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
So I might have missed that in my read.
Let's go with issue 7 then. So we can get to issue 8. So Matt's able to actually relatively quickly dispense with Mysterio, but he can't really finish him off because he needs to know where the child is. We then get a history of Mysterio, and we learn that Quentin Beck is dying. Beck wanted to actually die at the hands of Spider-Man, but he realized that the current Spider-Man was not his Spider-Man. So he decided he'd go with a second-rate hero, right, which would be Daredevil as his next choice. So we kind of get a little bit of how Beck, basically learned about Daredevil's history from the Kingpin, how the child was artificially inseminated into Gwyneth, and other details about Mysterio, like how he tricked Foggy with Lydia, who was just an actress. All kind of the supervillain revealing his master plan.
Right.
So, He monologues basically because Daredevil can't do anything to him at this point. In the end, though, Matt is actually does finish off and lets him in on how all of his machinations have been tried by others before him, and that Mysterio is just kind of a copycat. He's not original. He stole from the Kingpin. He stole from all these other individuals, and in the end, Mysterio ends by copying Craven and taking his own life.
Yes. And I counted the pages. It took 9 pages for Mephisto, Metamucil, to tell exactly how his plans were all laid out. Mm-hmm. And there was too many M's here. I don't know how many times I confused Mephisto and Mysterio.
The green and the red should be a dead giveaway on separating those two.
Well, you're talking to not someone as familiar, but I had fun with it. Yeah. Okay, so maybe I've watched too much Family Guy in my life, but I hear Stewie Griffin's voice, the little boy with the football-shaped head, as Mysterio's voice. He's got that dramatic actor, so in that narration, I'm like, I keep hearing Stewie's voice.
Wow. Okay.
He's not a villain you can take. He's terrible. He is a terrible, terrible person, but he's also ludicrous, and in some ways you can't take him very seriously. So that's why I think I was getting that Stewie voice.
All right. So issue 8.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So of course, Mike, you need to look at that very first panel and tell me who that is.
Hang on. Swipe. Very first panel.
Very first panel. Who is that right there? Yeah.
Yeah, spit, curl, and everything. There is no denying that.
That is Clark Kent right there.
Yeah, without a doubt.
In this issue. So
oh, that's great.
Anyway, so that's on your list. You want all those crossovers, right? So
yeah, let me make a note here.
Daredevil ladies, writing it down. We see at the start of this issue, Peter Parker and Mary Jane are basically getting prepared for Karen's funeral, and it's we could probably spend a good amount of time going through the crowd here and trying to identify all of these people that are in the crowd.
Yeah.
It's definitely like Stan Lee sitting up in the front row.
Uh-huh.
The guy with the pipe beside Stan Lee, I'm trying to decide that's supposed to be Steve Ditko, maybe. I don't know. It's in kind of like some of those, not all the way back rows, but like some of the regular people that are kind of in the last few rows. I'm assuming that those are going to be like friends of Kevin Smith or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. Then I thought initially that the person in the veil towards the back was Natasha, but then I think that's her actually up in the third row. So I'm not for sure who that is in the last row. But yeah, there's just
it would be fun to figure out who they all were. Mm-hmm. Maybe there's a guide somewhere. I was wondering who the Gorilla Mask guy was in the back.
Yeah, I don't know initially. I'd have to look that up. The first thing that pops into my mind is Banape, M'Baku, right? But it's been so long, and the costumes possibly changed. It's definitely Luke Cage there beside, and
Luke Cage, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I think it's Reed Richards and Sue Storm, or probably Johnny Storm behind, and this little group of kids. Oh, that's Power Pack. Okay, that's Power Pack and the Foundation there, I think. So, no. I don't know. I guess I shouldn't say that. But we could spend a lot of time trying to figure that out, so I'll stop. All right. So after the funeral, Matt returns home. Finally, we get the end, basically, of Karen's letter. So that letter is kind of played out here over several issues. Later on, Matt meets up with Peter Parker, and Matt basically is unable to find one good thing that came out of this situation until Peter reminds him that, Matt, you saved the girl. So you saved Gwyneth. So that's what you did it all for. Matt then kind of makes the rounds on apologies, like apologizing apologizing to Natasha Romanoff. We get because of some money that Karen left because of a life insurance policy. Foggy and Matt are going to rebuild Nelson and Murdoch on the location of the old brownstone that was destroyed back in Born Again, all right, by Wilson Fisk. And we kind of go to the hospital where Matt's mother and the baby are. And we learned that the baby is going to be named Karen. And that kind of wraps up Guardian Devil.
You mentioned that you said Spider-Man was telling Daredevil that he saved Gwyneth's life.
Mm-hmm.
But I read it as it being the baby girl's life.
It could be both. You know what?
It says baby girl, so that's
yeah. I thought he just said girl, but
yeah, it's baby.
Say that you're right. It is. You are correct.
That seems more poignant, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a human being that has a whole future in front of them, and
because I actually went back through this after I'd finished some of my notes, and it's like the last time that we see Gwyneth, she was getting carried off in a car,
right?
And I couldn't find anything after that, so that was kind of weird. So I don't know what happened to Gwyneth then.
Somewhere in that, someone's exposition said what happened to her, that she was, or I guess it was Mysterio whenever he's talking about how he put all these pieces together. Yeah. So she was a throwaway player.
Apparently,
Yeah. But it was a good. I mean, I thought that scene with him and Spider-Man was really poignant, and it was a good way to kind of wrap this up. Not at the very end of the book, but it was good. It was well constructed.
Now, one thing we haven't mentioned, but there are some excellent splash pages all through all 8 of these issues. And it looks like we get a double page spread for the last 2 pages. Mm-hmm. But even like the funeral scene there at the very beginning with all the characters, that's a big giant splash. Lots of splash images. So it's got to be one of those things where Quesada just basically got to draw an awesome pinup for
so good
for the book. Yep. Let's see. I was going through my other notes. Yeah. So as you're reading this, you're getting that feeling that Kevin Smith is just stealing pieces from other people's stories. But then when you see Mysterio, go into how he was doing all this plan, and we learned that he is just stealing ideas from other people. It's like it's a play on the play,
right?
In Kevin Smith's writing. So you have to then think it's not that Kevin Smith was ripping them off. It was a storytelling, piece that was supposed to be included.
Right. That made it acceptable that he wasn't just taking a plot or a story idea from Miller, but he incorporated the whole idea of stealing, things into the story with Mephisto or Mysterio. Oh my God.
Mysterio. Mephisto, Devil. Mysterio, Magician. Okay. There you go.
Mandrake, the Magician.
Mandrake, the Magician. There you go. Mysterio's more like Mandrake than Mephisto.
I'm getting Marvel shame shed.
I don't know if
you can DC shame me on the next story. So
speaking of Mephisto, I don't know if is that always what Mephisto looks like? I don't think I've ever read a comic. That was a really cool design for Mephisto. I thought that was really cool.
So you have the Infinity Gauntlet version of Mephisto, which is actually how he's drawn most often, which is where he looks more like a traditional devil type character. But in Daredevil, we talked in the last previews about Ann Nocenti. She's got a new book coming out. I can't remember which book it is, but she was writer on Daredevil for quite a while. And there was a run that she did with John Romita Jr. where Mephisto was drawn more closely to what you see here in this story. I mean, it had the John Romita Jr. flair to the character drawing, but it was more representative. So it's like he has a different appearance whenever he's in Daredevil than he does when he is in a lot of other books. Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
He was intimidating in that scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I probably wouldn't have. My constitution would have been in trouble.
So, all right, we want to grade this.
Yeah.
All right, who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Shadow
right.
go. Shadow go.
I gave it an 8.5, very fine plus. It's definitely something I would read again. I liked this one a lot. Like I said, big Kevin Smith fan. I liked all of the names of either characters that have been in his other movies or people that are in his life. If you kind of know his circles, like he would use last names of people. And like there was a Mosier Schwalbach and something law firm, and that's his producer's last name, his wife's last name.
In this story, I didn't see that. So,
yeah, that was the lawyer group that Karen Page went through for her life insurance policy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So like little touches like that were kind of cool, and just kind of nice. And then I think at one point he says something about somebody might have to go back to being a clerk. So there was just like
he did.
Yeah,
that caught my attention too. Yeah.
I that one went over my head, but now
so the little Easter eggs
obvious.
in there definitely made it worth it for me.
I was more into the artistic Easter eggs than the textual Easter eggs.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I'll go next, and I'll say 9.0. I'll see your 8.5.
Okay.
And call it a 9.0 just because it has the near mint in the name, very fine / near mint. And it's really because Smith is a really smart writer combined with fantastic art, and it's paced really well. There wasn't any point in the whole story, the 8 issues, that I was thinking, well, it's really dragging. It's what I expected it to be. Now I've reread some other like Smith's Spider-Man Black Cat, and it didn't hold up as well. This does hold up, 20 plus years after its original publication.
And I'm right there with you, Mike. I gave it a very fine near mint 9.0 as well. It's in my collection. I've got the trade. I've got a graded copy of the first issue. I love this story. It absolutely held up for me. And I'd like now I've even debated, do I need to get all 8 issues, individual issues to go into the collection? Because then I'll have the first. Then I'd have the first 10, but because I've got the 9 and 10 graded as well. But I could get a little expensive, so I'd probably won't go there. But
the 9 and 10? That was the David Mack.
That was the David Mack first appearance of Echo and first cover of Echo.
Oh, of course.
So,
yeah.
Okay. Yep.
Yep. So I've got 1, 9, and 10, 9 8s graded in this series. So. All right. So Monster Society of Evil time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're going from one end of the spectrum to the other.
Yep.
When it comes to tone.
Yep.
I've got a synopsis that I have to give some credit to DC Fandom. I took their synopsis for each issue and trimmed it down to a digestible size. So Shazam, the Monster Society of Evil, is by Jeff Smith from Bone fame. He writes and pencils and inks and letters. The only thing he doesn't do is color, and that's Steve Haymaker. Does that sound familiar to you guys?
Not to me, but that doesn't mean anything.
And this came out in 2007 as a 4-issue, 48-page prestige format comics, and it basically reimagines the origin of Captain Marvel, and it definitely contradicts material supplied in early established canon, at least in DC canon, like the Power of Shazam graphic novel. So I'll jump right into the synopsis, and then we'll pause in between to talk about some notes. Issue 1 is Billy Has a Secret, and I'm going to comment right now that the title for each issue is in the original Wiz Comics or whatever, the Captain Marvel. They had this actual secret code in those Captain Marvel comics.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I was going to ask if anybody decoded any of these.
I did.
Okay.
Yeah,
it was my favorite part of the book.
I tried not to, but I couldn't stand it.
Yeah.
It was like watching Wheel of Fortune. I'm like, what is that?
I had a great time with it.
All right, so Billy has a secret. Billy Batson is a young boy on the streets of Fawcett City. A street punk attempts to rob him, but he gets away and finds safety with his friend Talkie. In the middle of the conversation, Billy sees a man who looks like his father, and he takes off after him. Billy is led by the shadowy figure into a subway car that takes him to the wizard Shazam, who informs Billy that he has been chosen to become his replacement as Captain Marvel, and bestows him with the powers of Solomon, Hercules, Atlas, Zeus, Achilles, and Mercury by saying the wizard's name. This was where I was going to ask Scott to insert the thunderclap. Shazam, the wizard Shazam, informs Captain Marvel that Billy is his new host body and proceeds to be crushed by the stone that's hanging over his head by a thread. After seeing the way Billy lives, Captain Marvel goes to the wizard and gets better lodging for Billy. They reach the Rock of Eternity, and Marvel warns Billy that he must never attempt to reach the peak of the mountain. After Billy learns that he has a baby sister, he defiantly climbs to the top of the rock anyway in an attempt to get back to Earth, and all heck breaks loose. After Marvel pulls him down from the peak of the rock, Billy wakes in his abandoned apartment. Billy tries to save a woman from being attacked by strange alligator men. After transforming into Captain Marvel and defeating them, the alligators show him a grassy field with giant shoe prints that he recognizes as Billy's. The alligator men warn Captain Marvel of the coming Mr. Mind. So, thoughts, comments?
All my
Concerns?
comments are like overall comments. I don't have anything like on an issue by issue basis. So
Okay. Well,
just kind of going into it, I thought this is it flows very well. It feels we kind of talked before the show, but it feels like it's set up for anybody to understand what's going on. It's definitely all ages, but not in a played down kind of way. It feels somehow like it is actually aimed at. Well, I guess bonus that exact same way. So it isn't that surprising.
No.
That Jeff Smith's able to do that with the Shazam character also.
It is definitely all ages. My comments kind of range from I like how Billy leaves a couple bucks for Captain Marvel to buy a hot dog, and that becomes Captain Marvel's favorite food. I mean, obviously he doesn't have pockets, doesn't have money, so Billy was thinking of him. About those alligator men in the original Captain Marvel comics, and I remember reading these stories, they were crocodile men, and they were aliens from some planet, which was not unusual for those stories. They were way out there. In the afterword of this book, Jeff Smith says he decided to change them to alligator men because he really liked the comic strip Pogo, which had a cartoon alligator, featured Albert the alligator or something like that. Just to get this little minutia out of the way, the series that Jeff Smith wrote really reimagines the origin of Captain Marvel, to the point of saying that, okay, there's this under Fawcett back in between like 39 and 53, it was depicted that Captain Marvel and Billy were two separate entities. Almost like Billy, when he would say the name or say the Shazam word, it would bring in a genie that would replace him, almost like replace his space and space-time continuum. But after 1986, Roy Thomas wrote a Shazam book, and it basically made Captain Marvel a grown-up version of Billy. So it's kind of interesting the way it's played differently in different eras, but this is more along the lines of
the original.
Yeah. I think that was my only comments about, other than the code, that A equals Z, B equals Y, C equals X, etc. But so if you guys are ready, I'll go to issue 2.
Cool.
This is called Mary Takes the Cake. Billy wakes up after dreaming about his unknown sister. When he turns on his TV and sees footprints at the park, he realizes he is responsible for those footprints after he walked to the top of the Rock of Eternity. Billy decides he could join the circus using his new powers. On the way to the circus, he hears Attorney General Dr. Savannah addressing an audience and notices a large row of ants going towards the footprints. Billy is attacked by the same bully as before and runs toward the circus. He sneaks into the circus and witnesses a beast tamer being torn apart by the alligator men. Billy recognizes one of the captured kids as his own sister and transforms into Captain Marvel to save the children, including his sister. A tiger joins the fight and helps against the monsters, but when the monsters retreat, the tiger and Billy's sister also disappear. Captain Marvel goes outside the circus to see a giant monstrosity in the park where the footprints were. The monster reveals himself as Mr. Mind and he reveals his evil intentions. Captain Marvel tries to fight Mr. Mind, but it is much too strong for him. As Captain Marvel leaves the scene, he is watched closely by Dr. Savannah. When Mr. Mind leaves, Captain Marvel finds Billy's sister and realizes she has been with the tiger, Talkie Tawny, all along. The tiger reveals he is actually Billy's homeless friend. Captain Marvel says the magic word and shows his sister that he is Billy, and Mary tells Billy she is also a foster kid and ran away from home. Billy agrees to let her stay with him, but Mr. Mind returns with a twin creature, and Billy has to change back into Captain Marvel. During his transformation, lightning strikes Mary and pushes her into a vehicle. Mary comes out of the wreckage unhurt and is transformed into a small and female version of Captain Marvel. Mary Marvel flies around and shows just how much faster she is than Captain Marvel, but she also shows that she's not as strong. So, thoughts?
Is Tawny Tiger, he's more anthropomorphic originally, right?
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
in the originals. He's standing on his back, two legs.
That's
Okay.
what I
He's
thought.
talking.
So,
He is more like Tony the Tiger.
yeah.
And it's Yeah, I don't know if you meant that on purpose or on accident, but it's. But yeah,
I
he's.
didn't say Tony. I said Tawny. I thought it was Tawny.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought you said Tony, but
No.
it's
Tawny.
Talkie
Talkie.
Tiger.
Talkie.
Talkie
That's
Tawny
right.
is what it is.
Talkie
Yeah.
Tawny. There you go. I
Yeah.
had Tawny.
Yeah, you're right.
Tawny the Tiger. So yeah, okay.
You got this.
That's right. I did not say Tony. So
I mean, one of the added things that Smith puts into this about Talkie Tawny is he's also, I forget the name of the creature, but he's able to change forms. He's basically, he can be the homeless man. He can be a
Ifrit,
little black.
I think is what it was.
A what?
Wasn't it an Ifrit?
Yeah, that sounds
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
He could be a small domestic cat. He could be a tiger. He could be a lot of things.
Now, is Mary Marvel, is that kind of her origin story, or is that altered as well?
That I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's probably altered. I can't tell you what her original origin was, except that it's consistent with she is the long lost sister of Billy Batson.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. I don't know how she actually got her powers.
That
Somehow
was
he
the part
probably-
more. I guess I never realized that Mary Marvel was Billy's sister.
Yep. Any other comments? Oh, okay. All right. Issue 3, Savannah comes on strong. The Marvels, and this is the most plot heavy, or more things going on, scenes changing, so it's a little bit longer. The Marvels fly toward the two monsters, and Mary senses through their lack of vibrations they are not actual living beings. Marvel realizes Mary has the power of Athena and concludes that the giants are robots controlled by Mr. Mind. They retreat when some helicopters from the Department of Heartland Security start shooting at them. These helicopters are under the control of Dr. Savannah as the Attorney General somehow. Back in the derelict apartment, they revert back to their normal appearances and notice all the cockroaches from his apartment have vanished. The TV news reports all the bugs from Fawcett City have disappeared as well. A couple of government agents grab the two kids, covering their mouths to prevent them from saying the magic word, and Dr. Savannah arrives and interrogates Billy, forcing him to write his answers to prevent him from speaking. When Savannah learns that the monster might be a robot, he decides to steal the technology to incite war and gain profit. Savannah orders his men to take Mary to a secret location, while he takes Billy to the place where the giants are standing. Once in the park, Savannah and Billy approach the giants with the two bullies. who are transformed into monsters that attack Savannah and Billy. Billy frees his mouth and transforms into Captain Marvel before the monsters reach him. More monsters appear and introduce themselves as the Monster Society of Evil, but they are all defeated by Captain Marvel. Hours later, Billy is sadly sitting alone because he thinks he lost Mary, but Talkie Tawny arrives and offers his help. Billy goes to the media for help while Talkie investigates at the park. Billy goes to the SNN offices, which SNN stands for Sterling, I believe, as Captain Marvel, and he is allowed to talk with Mr. Sterling Morris, the owner. Morris promises to help him find the girl, but said to make a case against Savannah, they're going to need proof, so Mary sets out to find Talkie. In the meantime, Talkie notices 2 of Savannah's agents come from inside the robots, the ones who took Mary originally. And that's the end of issue 3.
So in Mary Marvel's first appearance, Billy is basically apparently gagged and can't say Shazam. So Mary just exclaims that Billy cannot say Shazam, and when she does, she gets struck by magic lightning. So it's not a very dramatic or power sharing.
No.
It's just she says
It's one of those
Shazam
cases where the original was not better.
Yeah. And also, her first appearance predates Supergirl.
Oh.
Oh yeah, I believe, that makes sense. I mean, I bet it was mid to late 40s, her first appearance, and Supergirl wasn't until 57 or 58.
Let's see. By 45, she had her own title, and her first appearance was in. This is all thank you to Wikipedia, so we'll assume that is correct. 1942, Captain Marvel Adventures number 18.
So by 16 years.
Yeah, quite a bit. So,
but I am almost sure that they were both created by the same person, Otto Bender.
Created by Otto Bender and Mark Swayze.
Yep.
There you go.
All right. Mr.
Looking
Shad?
for lightning to strike twice.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Sorry, I couldn't pass that one up.
Any thoughts, Shad?
Nope, I got nothing on this one.
Okay. All right, so last but not least, Mr. Mind makes his move. Captain Marvel flies off to rescue Mary, and Talkie Tawny trails behind him until they come to one of Mr. Mind's twin robots. Marvel is too large to enter, and they can only get in as Billy. Tawny warns him that the rules that prevent him from transforming back and forth at the Rock of Eternity also applies to the giant robots. If Marvel changes into Billy, he won't be able to change back if he gets into trouble. Marvel changes into Billy and then begins scouring the dark interior of the robot. Outside, Sterling Morris and his reporter Helen maintain radio contact with Billy, who tells them that the robots are filled with cockroaches, but he has yet to find Mary. Sterling and Helen can see Savannah with Mary on the outside of one of the robots. At the top of the robot is a cockpit. Mr. Mind tells Savannah to strap Mary into the cockpit. Billy gets to the top of his robot and discovers that he's inside the wrong one. Or that he was inside the wrong one. Desperate to save Mary, Billy ignores Talkie Tawny's warning and speaks the name Shazam. The lightning interacts with the mystical properties of Mr. Mind's robots, transforming Billy into a giant-sized Captain Marvel. The resulting backlash of powers creates a quantum singularity in the sky above them. Captain Marvel batters the robots, and they are drawn inside the rift. The singularity also siphons away Captain Marvel's power, transforming him back into Billy Batson before closing. With the threat eliminated, Billy jumps on Dr. Savannah and begins beating him up. Mary arrives, revealing that she still has the power of Shazam. She was a safe distance from the singularity and didn't lose her power. She speaks the magic word and bequeaths a portion of her power back to Billy. Sterling Morris is so impressed with Billy Batson's heroism that he invites him to become a member of the Morris Company family as an employee of Wiz Radio. And that's it. And you guys are just stunned into silence.
For me, you didn't do the code at the end. I was waiting for you to do the code at the end of the story. You did all the other codes, so
I didn't translate it for this.
Oh.
Well, it is. It's the Mr. Mind makes his move. Yeah.
No, the last page where it says the end.
The end?
The
question
end.
mark?
Oh, of course, yes. Okay.
I didn't think you were done yet. So
Well, for a while, this code could be found on the DC Comics website, but it's not there anymore. I looked.
Oh, okay.
So is this the exact same code even that was in the old books?
Yeah.
Like, is it the same decipher code?
It's pretty generic. I mean,
Okay.
AZ,
Yeah.
These are kids, and I mean,
drink more Ovaltine.
Yes.
So, overall thoughts?
I'm trying to think of a Captain Marvel story that I like better than this one.
Yeah.
I can't. I couldn't come up with a single one. So as far as you want a Captain Marvel story, there's hard to steer somebody to anything besides this.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know, Mike. What are you coming up with? That's a better Captain Marvel story.
Honestly, there was no big story that I could even compare it to. I read a lot of those 70s Shazam comics. I remember watching the TV show on Saturday mornings, which was a lot different anyway. But other than that, it was sort of seeing Captain Marvel in group settings and being like in the Keith Giffen, JMD DeMatteis Justice League, where he's kind of played off as sort of, silly, but
at that point it's Billy Batson in an adult body,
sure,
but still Billy Batson
Same
personality.
movie. Same
yeah,
movie.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I don't necessarily like that version. What I'd say my favorite, if I had to compare it to something, it would be Kingdom Come, because that was a very Captain Marvel centric story. It wasn't just about him, but I'd say he played such a large part in that story. And I don't know if Shad's read Kingdom Come, but okay, so it's
been a while.
He was it's just but again, it wasn't a complete,
it's not necessarily a positive Captain Marvel story, though,
it wasn't,
right?
No.
Yeah.
But what the aspects of this book that I thought were fantastic was that it was, in a word, charming. It was like you just enjoyed things for the sake of what they were. The art was fun to look at. Shad and I were talking earlier about how the renditions of Billy and Mary look like little brat dolls. They kind of had to overset. I'd rather someone depict them that way than make them look too old, too.
Yeah.
Like a shrunken down adult.
Yeah.
It's hard to draw a kid.
Mm-hmm.
But this kind of harkens back to what these comics, these comics in the 40s were for kids. They weren't for us. They weren't even going into the 50s and 60s. They were still sort of, kids were the target audience. So I thought that, but Jeff Smith didn't make it just accessible to kids. It was also, as an adult, you can enjoy this story quite a bit.
Well, in that time period, 40s and 50s, Captain Marvel was outselling Superman.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Wow.
So it was more than just kids buying that book.
Sure.
Yeah.
True.
So.
Yeah. But we're talking millions of copies.
Yeah.
It was, and that led to the big lawsuit that DC filed against Fawcett, and they went back and forth. It's a story in and of itself. But they went back and forth to the point that it was better for Fawcett to just go out of business.
Well, superhero comics just started dying off in the 50s.
Yeah, that kind of.
They weren't selling millions of copies anymore. So then that lawsuit went on for so long that Fawcett just threw in the towel. It's like, sure, have Captain Marvel. We're done with him.
Yeah. And then you could go in everything from, oh my gosh. Okay, so what's the not Mr. Miracle, but Miracle Man.
Yeah.
There's a whole story connecting the Miracle Man history with Captain Marvel and when DC they acquired the rights to the name, but they couldn't, or to the character, but they couldn't put the name on the covers. Yeah, so I read it was mostly about the Miracle Man, but very interesting stuff if anybody ever wanted to read it. Yep. Probably the most well-known rights, battle
Right.
over the years of comics.
Of course, do you know about the third Captain Marvel?
The one that said
Split.
I've got a couple of those ridiculous.
I used to have all 4 of them. I think there were 4 total books, and I used to have all 4 of them. I did sell them, so I didn't read a single one of them.
So he's basically got detachable limbs, Shad. When he says they can split, which saying that verbal
Holy cow.
prompt is what gives him the powers. That's a harken back to the original magic word of Shazam. So when he says split, the arms go off and they hit. It's like arm fall off. Arms fly off and they hit the bad guy.
Yeah.
It's redonkulous.
Oh wow.
But it's worth having. I mean, you can get them pretty cheap. I got a couple of those issues.
Yeah, they're not too bad. So some of them are tough to find because there's aren't a whole lot of them. But So, no, this was just, it was fun to read. I was glad to revisit this because the last time I read it had to have been at least 10 or more years ago, and probably even longer back than that. Well, no, let's see. I'm trying to remember how old my youngest would have been at the time. So about 15 years might be about right. It was the last time I read this guy. Read Bone. Then I learned he did this book for DC. So I was like, well, let's go read this. And sure enough, it was good. So
well, me being the DC guy, I'm surprised I had never read it, but I just...
Oh, you hadn't read this before?
Oh,
I didn't realize
not.
that.
No.
Oh, okay.
I read The Power of Shazam by Jerry Ordway, and that was good, but in a different way. And just a little piece of trivia, Fawcett City, which is, it seems to be right in line with DC locations, Metropolis, Gotham City, and Fawcett City, all those imaginary cities. But originally in Fawcett Comics, it was New York. That's where Billy was based.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't until Roy Thomas took over in the 80s with incorporating Captain Marvel into his All-Star Squadron, I think, that he made it Fawcett City.
And Mike, for people like us who like to complain about the change of Captain Marvel and Billy Batson's personality switch, so what? He was not even 40 years the original way, and he's been 50 years the way that he is now. So I guess we got to kind of give up on that, but I still prefer this version where it's not the kid in an adult body. I didn't mind it so much in Justice League, that Bwahaha time period, but it's been taken to another level, kind of like in the movies, right?
Yeah.
And it's gone too far,
Yeah.
So,
it makes him dumb almost, and that's not what
No.
it should be. Even if it was a kid in an adult's body, he doesn't need to be an idiot.
And what's the S stand for?
Solomon. Yeah, they never really think about bringing the wisdom of Solomon
in
into the picture. Right.
And spoiler, they talk about that in the movie. So
okay.
Oh.
Yeah. Scott's the only one of the three of us that have seen the Fury of the Gods movie. So we'll have more on that at a later date, I'm sure.
Right. So, well, I'm gonna give this a Very Fine Plus 8.5. Like I said, it's the best, to me, the best pure Captain Marvel story that I can remember reading. Now, I've read more. I feel like I've read more Captain Marvel than I have Wonder Woman, and that's probably not true. But I still, if anybody's gonna ask for a Captain Marvel story, this is gonna be the one I'm gonna point them to, because you get the origin, you get what I consider the better version, the character, and Jeff Smith. So it's just it's a win all the way around, which means I got to go buy it now because I don't own this.
That broke the threshold, didn't it?
So I got to go buy it. I got to track it down.
I would agree with everything Scott said. I think it's the perfect book introduction for this character. It's all kind of in one, very smooth. You don't have to go outside of it. There's not a lot of thinking, which is great. In it, and so I gave it a 8.0 Very Fine.
And I'm right there with Scott, 8.5 Very Fine Plus. I don't know that, it's just for so many different reasons. These were both good books that we talked about today. But if just maybe because the Daredevil was a little bit more sophisticated, maybe that's what edged it out a little bit. But 8.5 is still a really good grade.
Yeah, no,
you know,
and I talk about my grade. That 8.0 is anything. That's something that you want to own, you want to recommend to people, and this is definitely well into that. Into that. It's not like just teetering on the edge at that 8. It's well into that grade. Sorry, Mike, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. I was pretty much done too. It's just it's a good thing no one ever. Well, hopefully no one ever holds us to account on our grading over time. It's a sliding scale.
Well, and you maybe has to make some slight adjustments, here and there. But that's why I kind of, you keep making fun of me for my scale, but that's why I set the scale so that way I can kind of feel like I can get things into at least groups and then kind of grade them inside of those groups. And I'm very hesitant to grade anything, and even stuff that I love like 9.6, 9.8, because that's a little much sometimes. So
we've been pretty lucky lately with the books that we've picked, and maybe we have that sort of inherent knowledge of what's known to be good. But
I had read both of these and remembered liking both of these, so it was an easy selection. This time. So all right, we want a CLZ shake. We good on time?
Yeah.
Let's see what we got here. Oh, guess what? A Star Wars book that I haven't read. So,
no way.
Let's see. Star Wars 32, The Jawa Express. So this is though the time period where Carmine Infantino was artist on the book. So he was off and on artist for quite a while on this one. But I don't know that I ever actually read it. But it does. Okay, but here's something important. It does include a 1-page ad for Rom the Space Knight.
Ah, there you go. There's a ROM tie-in.
That's right. Got to tie everything into ROM. So.
Ready, Shad? Or you want? Yeah, go ahead.
All right. What do we got?
I saw a lot of green.
Yeah, George Romero's Empire of the Dead.
Oh.
Act 2, Issue 1. I did like this series. It was good, and I haven't read it again since it came out in 2014, so it may not still be good 10 years later. But it was a cool take on zombies and vampires living together in the city and how it all kind of played out. So it was a neat little story there.
They learned how to coexist, zombies and vampires.
They were doing something. I can't remember exactly what they were doing, but there was some sort of coexisting happening.
Okay, I don't know why I show this to you because you guys can never see it.
Jungle Twins.
Jungle Twins. We saw that one real clear.
Yeah. Oh, it's actually Korak, son of Tarzan. Number. Oh boy, should have put my glasses on. Number 54. So I can't remember. I don't think Korak had his own run for that long. I think he maybe when Tarzan's DC run ended, it became Korak. I might be wrong. Maybe there was a Dell or a Gold Key version of Korak, and it just transitioned when we got the Tarzan rights. But
that was back in the old days. They didn't want to start at number 1 because companies the grocery stores wouldn't want to carry him because that meant it was a new title and people wanted to buy the established titles. Right. So
So maybe it is. Maybe it was in sequential order from a previous publisher. But the name of the story is Blood Brothers Into the Land of Nubol, written by Bob Kanigher, art by Murphy Anderson, cover art by Joe Kubert. Those are some all-star creators right there. 1973 was when it was published or when it was released. And yeah, I can say without a doubt I have not read this. It was part of my completist mentality that I needed to pick it up, I'm sure.
So the first 45 issues were published by Gold Key.
Okay.
And then whenever it went to DC in May of 1972, at issue 46, it just continued the Gold Key numbering. The Gold Key series started in 1964. Apparently, January, let's see, April. So probably in January of 1964, because issue 2 is March of 1964. Issue 3 is May. So it was bi-monthly initially. So
Yeah. Well, I do know that at some point, both Tarzan and Korak Son of Tarzan, their sales weren't the greatest, so they merged them into Tarzan Family, believe it or not. They had just like Batman Family and Superman Family, they had a Tarzan Family.
Well, see, they made it, apparently 59 was the last DC issue, but there's not a note about it becoming Tarzan Family here, but that doesn't mean anything. So
I'm pretty sure it's what the case was.
Oh yeah, you're probably right. I was looking, sometimes I'm on comicspriceguide.com.
Oh yeah.
So, and here's Tarzan Family. It's listed at 1975, December 1975. First issue was 60, previously titled Korak Son of Tarzan.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. So as your completist, did you complete that run too? Do you have all the Tarzan Family?
No, I don't. I don't have it all. So
see, now you're stuck. You got to get 60
no,
through
I'll
66.
be on the lookout for me.
There's only 7 issues, so it only goes from issue 60 to 66. So it won't be hard to finish that off. So. So Shad, what we got coming up next?
We have previews up next.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
And maybe we'll talk about Shazam at the start of that episode.
Maybe, yeah.
All right. So Mike, if somebody wanted to reach out to you besides podcasts@bergcomics.com, where might they do that at?
Well, one way might be m.atchison90@gmail.com. And the other way might be in the Twitterverse at MikeAtchison5.
Shad, what about you?
You can find me on Facebook at Shad Schubert, SHAAD,
And I'm Scott Reed. You can find me at bergcomics.com, and we'll be back soon with another episode preview.
You didn't hear it. I guess not. No. It was a thunderclap. I was going to surprise you whenever I do my synopsis, and the first time says Billy Batson transforms with the same Shazam. I was going to. But if it's coming through your headphones, we won't be able to. Yeah. Now, if you unplug your headphones, it was a whim. Or play it. We can always put it back. We can always put it in the middle. That requires action. And you only have to do that whenever I curse or say something stupid. So we'll leave it at that. And mainly just when you curse. Yeah. I usually leave most of the stupid that we do in. Yeah, I cut off the beginning and the end. That's and based on music. That's all I do. The hardest work is cycling through everything, trying to find something to put at the very end. You know, that takes more time than anything else. I should probably just stop doing that. I'd save myself a bunch of time. Right. Yeah. Well, I'm sure nobody listens to that. That's actually the only thing I listen to. Oh. Because I live the rest of it, so I'm like, I wonder what he chose as a singer. Yeah, I kind of listen to that too. I don't listen to the whole thing anymore. Let's see if you can. I heard something, but not a thunder. It's still thundery, but yeah. Okay, but I promise I will put it in. Okay. Send me a link to it. I will add it. Okay. Okay. So I don't have to keep doing this. That's right. Hey, I'm just an annoying guy that doesn't randomly put it in through your entire speech. I'm just gonna, thunderclap. Just I don't know. Power of awesome. Yeah. I'm reminding myself of the people that like to put in animation on PowerPoint presentations, and they just overdo it with yeah. So doing this is kind of that version of it. I get one every year. 1 a year. All right.